Hello everyone, I wasn't sure what video to make next, but just turned on the lamp in my room and there we go. That is absolutely terrifying. The next video is on Ganon. Okay, enjoy. Villains are taking over the channel at the moment, and coming out of the Eggman design video success, I've been keen to explore Link's nemesis from the Legend of Zelda franchise, the evil pig lord known as Ganon. A constantly reincarnating presence doomed to haunt Link and Zelda for all existence. He's undeniably Nintendo's most threatening villain and one of the most memorable bosses in gaming history. I'm sure some of you will be saying, where's Ganondorf? And fair play, he's an iconic Zelda character too, but when making a video like this, I wanted to explore the true roots of Ganon's evil, and that is undeniably his pig-based form. In the last video I said egg about 100 times, this time it will be pig. Ganondorf wasn't always present in the Zelda series, not making an appearance until the Nintendo 64 era of games. It's a follow-up I'd be keen to make if there's interest, so click the top right of the video and vote if you'd like to see a Best Ganondorf Designs video too. We've got a Hyrule Historia amount of designs to get through today, so let's crack right on. I'm the artist Mark Flynn, and let's find out which Ganon design I think truly is best. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell if you'd like to help this channel grow. My next goal is 20,000 subscribers. Ganon's first in-game appearance was as the final boss in the original Legend of Zelda for the NES. Unlike Link, Ganon doesn't feature in any of the game's promotional artwork and instruction booklets, so his appearance was very much a mystery up until the game's conclusion. His appearance is a simple one by today's standards, with a basic sprite that makes use of a simple two-tone colour palette. His body is blue and his details and costumes are red. Key features that can be made out include a skull belt, boots, and well, a pig head. Overall, he kind of just looks like a big pig.
Yup, yup, yup. He's a big pig. Yup, yup. You can be a big pig too.
It's almost maddening to think how much the character has changed from this point onwards. While the appearance set a foundation for the character, I'm glad it changed a lot going forward. Zelda 2 featured a return of Ganon, but only if the game came to a tragic end. The sequel did not feature Ganon as a character, and instead Link fought off against a dark version of himself in the game's conclusion. The graphics team had to work really hard on that one. On his quest, should the hero perish, the game over screen would highlight the return of the Prince of Darkness, as the game's plot tied around his minions trying to revive him after the events of the first game. Here in his limited appearance there isn't much to really say, only a silhouette of the character can be seen, and it looks like a similar sprite to the original in all its piggish glory. As it's for a larger scale game over screen, there is a little bit more detail here, with Ganon looking like a brute force that you wouldn't want to mess with. That can't really be said for the design I'm about to mention. I've mentioned the Legend of Zelda TV series before, more so the brilliance that was Cheese Link. But if Ganon was to get a similar comparison, he would be a very bland Fontina cheese by comparison. Niche Cheese Culture Club 2K19. In the TV show, Ganon is your typical Saturday morning cartoon style villain. Here he is more of a pig/human hybrid, with the pig elements only showing on his face, with a new set of boorish tusks. He dresses in a purple cloak with a horned hood and looks more like a warlock or a wizard than a strong and mighty foe. His human hands are complemented by some spooky long fingernails, which just about sums up as much of a threat he is in the series. This is a mega underwhelming design for me. At a similar time there were cartoon interpretations of Doctor Robotnik and Mother Brain that were undeniably ridiculous, but memorable. This iteration of Ganon could have been much more. A Link to the Past followed and is one of my favourite Zelda titles of all time, and I'm stoked to play it again now that SNES games have come to the Switch. Ganon's form resumed a similar look to what had been set in the original game, with logical evolutionary steps that would be expected from the jump from 8 to 16 bits. The in-game sprite is a more detailed version of classic Ganon, with similar features that are more visible. His colour palette has advanced, including browns and different shades of green. These new colours help showcase new details such as tusks, toenails, a suit of armour, and a skull-looking necklace/belt. This time around there was an official artwork of Ganon, which is clearly inspired by the game's sprite. It does feature slightly different details such as a red bangle/crown. I'm not a massive fan of the artwork if I'm honest. I think it makes Ganon look a bit too comical for my liking, and while the game itself is very colourful, the last boss fight with Ganon always felt like a serious deal. The artwork of Aghanim by comparison seemed much more threatening, and it's a shame that Ganon looks a bit silly in his official depiction. Let's not forget how off that Aghanim art actually was though. Speaking of being slightly off, of course the CDI games, much like the TV show, did a lot more damage to the character than Nintendo could have ever predicted. In cutscenes alone the design is absolutely horrific, with horrible janky animation that makes this version of Ganon stand out as iconic. Just look at these freeze frames. Here, Ganon looks like a pug with a turd brown colour palette, which consists of nasty looking greens and yellows. The game sprite isn't as guilty of offending, but it's still pretty horrendous. It doesn't look like the version from the cutscene at all. In fact, I'd say that this sprite actually reminds me more of Murloc from the DuckTales movie. Quick little detour to say how much I actually love this film. Go watch it. This design largely leaves me speechless, but to many other people it's hands down the best Ganon design, purely for the YouTube poop legacy he burned into our eyes. The other CDI game that doesn't get mentioned too much is Zelda's Adventure, a top-down classic, I use that term very lightly, Zelda experience that also featured Zelda as the main character. The final showdown featured a horrendous rendition of Ganon that looked like Blizzard's Diablo if he was malnourished and had a diet that consisted entirely of peas. The soundtrack and sound effects were absolutely epic though, that cannot be questioned. I have no idea how this version isn't more memeable. Not only was Ocarina of Time the series' first shift away from the 2D world into a 3D one, it also saw Ganon's first change from being a pig sorcerer into a more feral and aggressive entity of power. Ganondorf pulled most of the strings in this title, and it wasn't until his defeat at the end of the game that we got our first glimpse of Ganon. Crushed by the remains of the castle, Ganondorf was assumed dead, but in a last effort desperate attempt, he transformed into his true form to the shock and horror of a 7-year-old artist Mark Flynn hid behind his Nintendo 64 controller. Any elements of cheesiness were dropped in this design, with a real emphasis put on making Ganon seem like an out-of-this-world monster that would take everything to defeat. The skull designs previously established were dropped, and the light blues and greens were replaced by a dark shade of green that matched the mood this character brought to the final showdown. While this form is undoubtedly pig-like, check out those hooves. There's a more demonic presence this time around due to the large-scale horns, dual-wielding swords, looser fitting clothing and rags, neon glowing eyes, and a large green tail. It's one of the first times his tail was actually noticeable. Guess that means you'd better crush it with a hammer. With great game art and an in-game model that did it justice, I'd imagine this is one of the most memorable Ganon designs for anyone watching this video. This look also made a recent appearance in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as a boss character, and it highlights this crazed form in true HD glory. The 3DS remake also did a great job too. Oracle of Ages and Seasons on the Game Boy Color followed up the original designs from the NES and SNES, whilst applying a level of seriousness that Ganon's Ocarina of Time form had just implemented. The artwork displays this very clearly. He again has red shoulder pads, now complete with large scale horns protruding, a long red cape, and a small red helmet. The skulls from previous designs make a return too. The character is again a shade of now slightly darker blue, with features that were established in Ocarina, such as the pig-like hooves. Are they hooves? I'm pretty sure pigs don't have hooves. I think they're trotters. Ignore me. New details include what appears to be a knuckle duster style device on one of Ganon's fists, and it complements his new and improved physique. This Ganon is stacked and looks like he could lift a truck over his head. He's very top heavy with long arms that make the design more threatening. It's not in a demonic way like in Ocarina, but it's a level of brute strength that needed to be applied to previous cartoon style designs. The game itself featured the most detailed Ganon sprite work to date, and it's clear to see just at a glance how right they got this sprite when it came to matching up with the artwork. This design feels like a logical step forward from A Link to the Past, and is much more in line with my mindset of how a Ganon from that era should look. With the release of the GameCube, Ganon's main series appearance took a slight detour. While Wind Waker featured Ganondorf as its main villain, Ganon sat on the sidelines for the most part outside of a few depictions within the game's ancient cutscenes and world building. The final showdown was with Ganondorf, and the pig-like form largely existed as a folk tale that had been passed down through generations. Before the final showdown, Puppet Ganon appeared as a boss in his place. Though this isn't really the same character, I think it's worth mentioning. This purple hanging puppet originally took on a pig-like form made up of spheres and a number of other shapes. The puppet transitioned into other forms that aren't really as relevant to the character's history, though I loved seeing Moldorm again. Does anyone else have nightmares about shooting his tail with the light arrow? I know I do. Four Swords Adventures is where Ganon would make his next real impact on the cube. Making his triumphant return as a 2D style final boss once more, he was massive. This is the largest scale sprite work that has ever been in a 2D Zelda title, and it feels like a logical step forward from the sprite established in the Oracle games. Ganon has continued to grow into a behemoth, and it's a fitting change now that he has 4 links to contend with. Similar to the Oracle games in terms of features and armour, his cape, helmet and shoulder pads are now purple, with his accompanying armour now incorporating a green plate. Extra details such as the skull emblems and spiked shoulders have been removed, but there is extra emphasis on his giant claw-like hands and trident that go hand in hand. See what I did there? With his giant arms and legs, he's still a brute, but it's definitely the most demonic the character has felt in a 2D art style, and the expressions of the design are actually quite scary for a 2D game sprite. Twilight Princess would round off the appearances on the GameCube, with a Ganon appearance much more in line with what had been established in Ocarina. Appearing for only the second time as a transformation for Ganondorf, this was a very different beast. When using the term beast, it's interesting to note the animalistic changes that came to this form. This is a primal representation of Ganon. He stands on all fours rather than upright for the first time in Zelda history. While retaining some of Ganondorf's features from the same game, such as the crown on his head, the character's hair grows into a lion-like mane and a similar long flowing tail, which offsets the character's much darker skin tone this time around. Looking much more like a wild boar than ever before, this design is covered in scars that indicate the weak spot on his stomach. Aesthetically, this is a really strong design for Ganon, but at the same time, I really disliked the portrayal of him as an animal. It felt like there was something more calculating in previous depictions, whereas this form feels like a mindless feral hog. Thankfully for Link, there was only one feral hog to contend with, and it only took his wolf form and master sword to take him down. In my previous Link design videos, I've discussed at length just how much I loved the Link Between Worlds for the Nintendo 3DS. The sequel to A Link to the Past is one of my fave Zelda entries, and I was a massive fan of how Link looked in this title. I can happily say I love this game's Ganon just as much. The game's promotional artwork presents a Ganon who carries some serious mass. This pig is an absolute unit. While the artwork is shrouded in darkness and mystique, it presents a character in menacing fashion, with white glowing eyes that stare deep into your soul. It's a huge retcon of how the character was presented in the prequel's artwork, and I'm happy with the change. In the game itself, it's undeniable. This Ganon is clearly the same Ganon that was established in the artwork of the Oracle games. It actually looks more like that artwork than that game's character model did. The key difference here is that this Ganon drops that knuckle duster style item in favour of spiked bangles on both arms. The rest of the ensemble is clearly there. It's a pretty big departure from Link to the Past Ganon, but I'm all for it. While A Link to the Past had Ganon, A Link Between Worlds had Yuga. The low-rule sorcerer was really the primary antagonist of this game, even managing to use Ganon at the end, fusing with the character. This hybrid gains many of Yuga's characteristics, whilst maintaining Ganon at his base. His skin changes from blue to purple, and he gains Yuga's dreadlocks, bangle, bracelet, trousers, and low-rule cloth. It was an interesting change to Ganon that didn't change too much about what already made the character great. Ganon wouldn't appear in a main Zelda title for a long time, as Skyward Sword on the Wii explored the origins of the character before his first reincarnation. He did however continue to appear in 3D spin-offs such as Hyrule Warriors, appearing as a playable character and giant boss. I say giant because this was easily the largest version of the character yet, which made slaughtering waves upon waves of enemies even easier than it usually is in the Warriors series. This design is influenced by Twilight Princess's Dark Beast form at its base, but is significantly different when you look at the details. This form makes use of a dark purple and bright orange colour palette. Ganon's skin is contrasted very strongly by his ginger hair, which can now also be seen emerging from underneath his new gold and ruby bracelets. Whilst he's had a lion-like mane in the past, this time around his tail seems more lion-like too, though his upper body is very top-heavy and his body shape and movements remind me somewhat of a gorilla. The pig elements are still here of course, though his boar tusks are bigger than ever and accompanied by massive horned shoulders, similar to some of the classic characters' shoulder pads. This Ganon feels like a god or monster from ancient China, and I'm not personally a massive fan of it. It's an interesting adaptation, but I aesthetically find the colours and features unappealing. That's not to say that unique adaptations are bad though. Breath of the Wild, as many of you will know by now, truly did break the staples and conventions of Zelda that had been set by the 3D games, and Ganon is one of the most successful ways the game achieved this. While the most popular 3D titles had got into a little habit of establishing Ganon as a transformation for the human form Ganondorf, Breath of the Wild broke this by having Ganon embody evil in its truest sense. He was a manipulative presence and calamity that plagued Hyrule. During early points of the game, his embodiment can be seen surrounding Hyrule Castle in the form of a purple and black dark shadow of evil. Within this, Ganon's familiar beast form can be seen, giving a preview of what lies beneath. However, when finally reaching the depths of Hyrule Castle, a form of Ganon is revealed that is completely unique to this Zelda entry. The boss fight with Calamity Ganon really stood out to me, as I really didn't expect to see Ganon appear in such a different form in this game. He's a crazed monstrosity, an amalgamation of the Ganon Blight bosses and Guardian enemies that Link has fought throughout the game. The most chilling part to me is the humanoid elements to him. It's clear that some of Ganondorf is left in here, and the skull and long flowing red hair is indicative of that. He feels like a crazed mad entity that still has some of the character's original thought process and cunning trapped in this abomination of a body. The endless amount of limbs that make up the creature are all ready for battle, with numerous ancient weapons ready to be used. The character is propped up by a number of legs on his back that make him traverse a room like a spider and look incredibly unsettling. Following this boss fight, the Dark Beast style four-legged form appears on a grander scale. Absolutely giant in size, this form takes up a huge amount of the Hyrule overworld. The design, while clearly borrowing from Twilight Princess's Dark Beast style, is now engulfed in flames, with neon lit fire making up the character's mane and embodying the true evil within this form. It's a true Ganon showdown in a sense, but I think the real strength is in the interesting idea that surrounds Calamity Ganon, the monstrosity. That isn't actually the last design. Ganon has appeared even more recently than in Breath of the Wild, as he took musical centre stage in the indie title crossover Cadence of Hyrule as the final boss. Interestingly enough, it's another form that highly resembled the Oracle games. If Four Swords Adventures was the 2D Ganon design that took this to its most serious point, this is it taken to new levels of cutesy fun. It's kind of a mismatch of different Ganon designs using the Oracle look as a basis. His armour includes details such as horned shoulders and skull belts yet again, though he drops the helmet for a crown/bangle, which highlights his comically thick ginger eyebrows and man bun. There's a Ganon sentence I thought I'd never say. He's a very well-rounded game sprite with oversized tusks and features. He's probably the cutest Ganon in the series, which makes him a far cry from the best in my eyes. Though, like the rest of the sprite work in this game, he's a joy to look at. With all these designs in mind, there's a clear standout for me. The best design has to be the Ganon design from Nintendo Land. This rendition of the character as a cutesy fabric and wooden based amusement park character absolutely stands out as a okay, I'll stop it. In reality, there are a ton of great Ganon designs, and though they differ in a multitude of ways, they each have their own individual strengths. Whether he's a sorcerer, or a joke, or a beast, each embodiment is unique. But there is a clear winner for me this time around, and it has to be the Ganon from Ocarina of Time. Ganon is essentially the embodiment of evil in Hyrule, and I think it makes the most sense for his true form to have visible indications that he is essentially the devil in this world. His demonic pig-like form is truly memorable, and his appearance is undoubtedly one of the highlights of the title. The final showdown in this game is incredible in all senses of production, from cinema-style cutscenes to the design of the stage itself. But without this imposing design for Ganon, it wouldn't have had nearly as much of a hold on me as it did. Ocarina of Time presents him as a wild beast that stands on his feet and wields swords like a man. He really feels like evil incarnate. I very nearly picked Calamity Ganon, but his design just doesn't have enough consistency with the previous ones. If there were some pig-like elements incorporated into this monstrosity, I think they might have created his scariest incarnation. One design I didn't mention in this video was Nightmare Ganon from Link's Awakening. Technically it isn't actually Ganon, but I'm interested to see if he gets a revamp in line with any of the designs mentioned here when the remake releases on the Switch. I guess we'll find out soon. What do you think? Do you agree with me? And are there any designs that you think I should have mentioned? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to check out some of my other design videos whilst you're here. At this time, I'd like to thank my patrons who help make videos like this possible, with a special shout out to Top Hat Gaming Man and Club Slade, who are donating at the top tier of donations. If you'd like to be featured in the credits, just head on over to Patreon, you'd really be helping me out.